In this video, we're going to talk about how to handle any objection using one simple question. So I've closed tens of millions in sales and I've helped 3,000 plus sales teams in the past 6 years, just consulting and training sales teams. This is one of the favorite frameworks that I've ever taught any of my clients, and I've used it tons myself. So how does it work? Well, before I give you the exact scripting, I need you to understand the principle behind why this works so well. Otherwise, if you don't get the underlying philosophy of why this works, you're not really going to be able to use it correctly. So why does it work? Well, the thing you have to understand is there's two sales you make on every sales call. There's a sale on the product, which is pretty straightforward, the deliverables and what you're actually selling, and then the sale on the thesis. Okay, so what's the thesis? I call it the sales thesis. The thesis is the idea, the belief, or the easiest way to maybe think about it is the method that's required to get them from A to B. So their current situation to their desired situation. So I'll give you some really, really great examples to help you explain this. Is essentially, if you look at Russell Brunson. So for instance, he made a lot of noise several years back when he was on Grant Cardone's stage and he was selling ClickFunnels, and he sold like millions and millions of dollars worth of ClickFunnels on a stage in one day over an hour, and it broke all these records. So if you watch that presentation, 80 to 90% of the presentation isn't about ClickFunnels whatsoever, which is kind of crazy, right? If he's selling ClickFunnels, like the software, you would think that he'd be talking a lot about ClickFunnels, but he wasn't doing that. What he was actually trying to sell you on in the presentation was the idea that funnels is the easiest, most effective, best way to be able to get customers online. That was the thesis, because if you believe that to be true, then buying the software becomes a natural byproduct of that. So we get that when it comes to direct response marketing, but very, very few people apply that to their actual sales calls. So I'll give you another example is we had a RCA program. It's called Remote Closing Academy. And essentially, this program was to take everyday, ordinary people who wanted to upgrade their career. They didn't have to have any sales experience. And essentially, we would teach them the skills of sales, teach them how to self-source their own positions. And then once they got a position, ramp up in the KPI. So that was basically the offer. Back in, this is 2020, 2021. What we would do is I would target people who were trying to make money online, and they are maybe going after things like Amazon, drop shipping, affiliate marketing, stuff like that. And basically the messaging was, hey, like if you want to create an income online and work remotely, you don't have to start a business. And the easiest, fastest, most effective way to do that, instead of learning all these skills to do a business or trying to compete in these red oceans of drop shipping and affiliate marketing, learn this one skill of remote closing. And in doing that, you could make 10 or 20K a month working remotely if you get good at this from anywhere in the world, right? So that was, I know it's a little long-winded, and we really, it's more concise when you have it in the marketing, but that was the thesis of that product, right? Because if I could get them to believe that the easiest, most effective way to create an income online is not starting a business, but by getting into remote closing, then obviously they're going to buy our product as a byproduct of that if they have the means to do it, right? So keep this in mind. You really want to get clear on this with your sales process, because if you're not clear on this, some of what I'm going to explain is not really going to make sense, right? And really what we're going to be doing is getting them sold first on the methodology and really the pitch, and then the objections and everything will kind of come after that, okay? So with all that being said, let's get into some scripting so you can actually see how this works. So I'm going to just kind of like go through a dialogue with you, and then I'm going to actually teach you what I'm doing as I'm doing it, right? So let's say you're at the price drop and you say the investment's just 10K. Okay. And then the prospect says, okay, that sounds interesting. I think I want to think about it. And you say, hey, no problem. Just curious, like, how do you feel about the process? I mean, investment and everything aside, do you feel like that this is ultimately what you need to get to 100 grand a month or whatever the outcome is? Okay. So that's the question. Right now, there's a lot to this question, and there's a lot of if they do this, then do this. So stay to the end, because we're going to go through all of that in just a second. Now, before I get into some extra scripting for you, I want to tell you why and what about this framework is so important. So the first thing is the first thing I say is no problem. Okay. So that diffuses the pressure. Like a lot of times what people will say is, I need to think about it. Oh, well, what do you need to think about? Right. That automatically raises the prospect's defenses, and they're just not even going to answer the question, honestly, because they know what you're doing. They're not stupid. So the first thing you want to do is agree or just diffuse. So I just like the word no problem, right? That just diffuses the pressure, and then you pause. And then we go into just curious, how do you feel about the process, investment and everything aside? Do you feel like this is ultimately what you need to get to the outcome, right? I used 100 grand a month, but whatever the outcome is. So you can see there, I'm isolating the money right? Because I just dropped the investment. So I want to isolate the money out because I'm temp checking right after the investment, isolate the money out. And really what I'm doing is I'm tying down on the process. Now, if you watch my other videos on the channel about how to pitch, how we pitch is really not about getting them sold on our deliverables. It's about getting them sold on our ideology about how we get them from current situation to desired situation, right? The method and the thesis. So what I'm really doing is I'm tying them back towards the thesis. Do you believe the thesis? Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. It's very, very key. The other thing that's very key, and this is what most people mess up with this framework, this is why it's so important to listen to this, is that you have to use strong and certain language. Okay. So you see how in the scripting I say, do you feel like this is ultimately what you need to get to 100 grand a month? And I'm going to look them directly in the eye and say it very clearly, distinctly, and directly. Okay. You almost want to present language that's so strong that it almost encourages them to say no, okay? What a lot of people mess up with is they kind of want to throw this out there softly so that the prospect agrees. Sure, if they agree and they're like, absolutely, I mean, that's good, right? We do want that. But if you're just soft with and you're like, well, you know, like, okay, well, how do you feel about the process? I mean, you feel like this is what you need? They're going to be like, yeah, it's what I need. Yeah, it sounds good. I'm just going to think about it. You know, like you need to really kind of throw it in their face and just make it very, very strong, certain. So it almost makes it easy for them to opt out because that's what you want, because you want to isolate what's really behind. Like I want to think about it, it's just a nothing. Like that's just a smoke screen. You want to find out what the real tangible thing is that you can put your finger on that you can handle. We'll get back to the video in a second, but if you're not clearing the money you want to make as a salesperson, then you want to hear me out for a second because there's two things that are critical to your sales success. So there's your sales skills, which is why you're watching this video. But the second thing is your opportunity vehicle, which is the offer, the company, and the comp structure you're currently with as a salesperson. So if you're looking to either get into sales or even you're in sales and you want to upgrade your current role for an even better one, and in doing so, get plugged into a community with thousands of other high-performing salespeople, then here's my offer to you. For only $17, I'll give you access to not only some of my highest level of sales training that I have, but also all of our remote paid sales opportunities that come through my recruiting firm before they hit the market. So for context, Close.io, which is the company I own, we're the industry's #1 recruiting firm. We placed over 1,100 reps just last year. And so for the first time ever, I'm creating a short list, allowing people to get access to those openings before they hit the public market and get access to some of my highest level sales training. So if you want that, check the link in the description. Now back to the video. Now, after you ask this, only two things can happen. Number one, if they say yes, then what we're going to do is we're going to proceed to a double tie down, which is going to confirm it's really just finances holding them back, right? So again, you were to say, hey, do you feel like this is exactly what you need to be able to get to outcome, to be able to get to 100 grand a month? Oh yeah, it's exactly what I need. No, I definitely want to do it. I just got to figure out a way to make it do it. Okay, got it. So what you're saying is finances aside, you're 100% in. Okay, so again, that would be the double tie down. That's what I would do before. Now, after that, I could proceed into my financial objection. Now, what's very, very key about that is I have to use 100% certain language. So you can see how, again, and I already went over this, but in this, I said, finance side, you're 100% in. I even just did like this motion thing that I did. It's very direct. And I'm like, are you 100% in? Like I use the phrase 100% because it's so strong. It almost, I'm hoping they're going to say no. I want to squeeze out any uncertainty before I chase down this financial objection. Okay. Now, if they say anything but yes, or they sound uncertain, then what you're going to do is you're going to follow the scripting I'm about to give you. Because a couple things could happen. They could be like, no, and then they could give you my real concern or the real concern. Or they could be like, you're like, hey, is this exactly what you need to get to the outcome? They could be like, yeah, I mean, I think so. That doesn't count, right? And you're going to see how we handle that in just a second. So let's just go through the thing all from the beginning, right? Hey, the investment's just 10K. Prospect says, sounds good. I think I just really need to think about it at this point, but thank you very much. Hey, no problem. Just curious, so I can stay organized on my end. How do you feel about the process in terms of what we covered earlier? Like investment and everything aside, do you feel like this is ultimately what you need to get to 100 grand a month in your business? And then the prospect says, I think so, but I just need to kind of like sit on it for a bit, right? I'm just going to interject and almost cut him off. And I want to say, I think so. Like, okay, well, like, hey, what's really coming up for you? Like, it seems like you don't think this is 100% what you need to be able to get your business to where you want to go. So look, like, you're not going to offend me, but like, what's specifically keeping you from thinking that this is going to work? All right. So you see what I do there is essentially I sense the uncertainty. I just kind of interject and I make a little joke because like they know as well as I know, I think so. We're weak like that. Like, hey, like you don't think it's going to work, right? So then I'm like, hey, what's coming up for you? You're not going to offend me, but like, look, like what's specifically keeping you from thinking this is going to work? And what I do, if you notice what I do there, it's very key. I actually assume they don't think it's going to work. That allows me to do two things. Number one, they're going to tell me the specific concern about why they think my process is not going to work, and I can address that. See, now I've taken the intangible, I think so, or I need to think about it, to tangible. I have this specific concern. That's what we want to do in objections. Intangible to tangible. The other thing that could happen is they could correct the record, because essentially what I did is I assumed they don't think it's going to work. If they do think it's going to work, it's just something else. They'll correct the record and give me something else specific that's really holding them back. Maybe it's a spouse. Okay. So you see how that works there. So again, once you do this, only a few things are going to happen. So number one, you're going to isolate a specific objection. So it could be, no, look, like I really want to do it. I do think it's going to work. I just take 24 hours of sleep on it before I make a decision. They might say, no, I really want to do it. I do think it's going to work. I just have a rule where I speak to a client first. No, I do think it's going to work. I just need to talk to my partner or my spouse. Or they could be like, no, like I think I'm actually concerned that, this isn't going to have enough support to be able to get me to where I want to go. Or they might ask you some specific questions. In any of those cases, obviously, if it's a specific concern, you just kind of address that based on your product knowledge. But any of those classical objections, 24 hours of sleep on it, I want to speak to a client first, I need to talk to my partner, whatever. I have a training on the channel. It's called 55 Minutes of Objection Training that'll explode your sales in 2025. It's a few videos back. Check that out. That'll give you all of the rebuttals, not really rebuttals, but the frameworks. I don't like the word rebuttal. The frameworks of how to actually handle that. Now, what if they don't give you something specific? All right. So like, what if they say something like, they just keep floundering. This happens sometimes. And I don't know, it's just a big decision. Okay. So if they do that, here's what we're going to do. So again, let's kind of go through the scripting and pick up where we left off. I think so. Look, like what's really coming up for you? It seems like you don't think this is going to be what you need to get your business to 100 grand a month. So look, like you're not going to offend me, but what's specifically keeping you from thinking this is going to work? Then the prospect says, I don't really know. Like I do think it's good. I think it's going to work. I mean, it's just like a big decision. And then you're going to say, gotcha. So, I mean, look, like I totally get that. You think it's just a little bit of nerves then about this decision? They're going to be like, yeah, that's it. Okay, great. Well, can I give you a little bit of feedback on that? And then they say, sure. Okay, look, well, I'm glad you're nervous. And then you pause. The nerves are there for a reason. And they're good. That means there's some weight to this. There's some meaning to it. I mean, nothing ever great in this world was built by somebody who wasn't a little bit of nervous at first. So being nervous is okay. But deep down in the pit of your stomach, like you should know, despite like the little bit of fear and the little bit of nerves that you're feeling, that this is the right thing. And when I asked you how you felt about it earlier, like you said, this is what you need, right? Yeah. Okay, well then let's get you going. You ready to go? So this is like the first loop. Okay, so what I'm doing here is essentially what's really happening when they give you this, the floundering, right? To where they just can't give you anything specific no matter what. I don't really know. I do think it's going to work. I do think it's going to work. It's just, it's just a big decision. When you get this floundering, that is, you should be able to close these. One call close. And being able to do it versus not do it is really one of the key differences between great closers and not that great closers. And so what you want to do in this case is you want to feed them the objection, right? Which is nerves. That's why I say, I think it's just a little bit of nerves then. They'll grab onto that because now I'm giving them something tangible because they're in an intangible space. So I just actually give them the objection and then I just handle the objection right there because that is really what it is. It is really just fear. Now I don't say fear because they're gonna be like, well, it's not fear. I'm a big tough guy. So I say, it's just a little bit of nerves, right? And then I go on with it. Hey, well, like, look, the nerves I'm glad you're nervous. That's a pattern interrupt. So I'm glad you're nervous. Pause, pattern interrupt. And then I just kind of give them some coaching. I mean, you could frame this however you want to. Like nerves are good. They're there for a reason. I mean, look, nothing ever great in this world was built by somebody who wasn't a little bit nervous at first. But deep down in the pit of your stomach, like you should know that despite the nerves, you do really need to do this. And when I checked in with you earlier when we were going through the process, you mentioned like, this is exactly what you need, right? Right. Well, let's get you going then. Like, I know it stings a little bit, but you need this. So let's get this done. You ready to go? So that's my close. I like the, let's get this done. You ready to go? You can just say whatever, right? Now, let's say they still hesitate. I'm going to kind of give you a little bonus structure here. All right. So let's say they still, oh, yeah, yeah, but you just got to understand, blah, blah, blah. It's a big decision, blah, blah. But still more floundering. I mean, if they give you something specific, great, you handle the specific. But let's just say it's more floundering. Okay. Well, hey, I totally appreciate you. And I totally appreciate you being open and honest about that. And look, like having a little bit of nerves in this moment, again, totally normal. But the real issue isn't the nerves and isn't the fact that it's a big decision. I mean, the real question is who do you want to be right now? And what actions and decisions are you going to make moving forward? Like, do you want to be the type of person who lets their own fear guide them and therefore never creating the reality that you actually want? Or do you want to be the type of person who could feel the fear and do it anyway? The type of person that can sense that discomfort, but knows that, oh, in the place of discomfort, that's the only place I can grow. And by stepping into that, actually create the business that you want to create. So which one of those two people do you want to be? So what I'm doing here, and again, it's kind of hard to say it when like you're just talking to yourself, but what I'm doing here is the who do you want to be close, right? And so what this is identity framing. So identity is actually the highest driver of human behavior, right? Like who we think we are dictates more of our decisions than anything else. So we want our actions. If you study Robert Cialdini, one of the most influential principles in the book Influence is the principle of consistency bias. Like we want to make actions consistent with things we've done and said in the past, and also who we believe we are in our identity, right? So what I'm doing here is I'm basically being like, which type of person do you want to be? And I kind of tee it up with this framework. I don't know if it's an NLP framework, but the real question isn't blank. The real question is actually blank. That's a reframe. So I say, hey, the real question is not this. The real question is really who do you want to be and what actions do you want to take moving forward? Do you want to be this type of person or do you want to be this type of person? It's very, very hard for them to squirm out of this one. Now, you don't want to use this if like they're not at the close. Like you don't want to use this if they got to talk to their wife. Okay. I just hit the mic, but you don't want to use this if they're going to have to talk to their wife, or they're like, no, I need to talk to one of your clients. Like if they're giving you something tangible, you got to handle the tangible. This is when they just are kind of in this floundering space. It's a really, really good thing. I've closed so many people with that. So that's it for this video. If you want to see my full objections training on how to handle any specific objection you might get when you do get those tangible objections, you can go right here.